Hello and welcome to Films for the Very First Time. My name is Jordan, and with me, as always, is Case McGeorge.
Oh, how's it going, everybody?
It's going well, and we are back in season two here. Every other week, we share a film that one of us has never seen with the other person. Could also be a TV show. Like we started off the season with 3 episodes of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I picked Grease, which Casey had never seen, and if you remember from last episode, Casey picked Face Off. Now, for the listeners, that was only 2 weeks ago. For us, we recorded, 7 weeks of Agatha in between the two things. So we are here to talk about Face Off. Casey, tell us what Face Off means to you.
All right, so we're gonna go back to 1997. Face Off is a John Woo action film. John Woo has he has panache. He has a very deliberate style. When you're watching a John Woo film, you know it's a John Woo film. There's a lot of slow motion. There's a lot of action. There's a lot of dual wielding pistols and machine guns, and you will get appearances of white doves at some point in the film. So this was released June 27th of 1997. Had a budget of $80 million. Box office wise, $245.7 million. That year it was the 11th highest grossing film of 1997. At the 70th Annual Academy Awards, it was nominated for Best Sound Effects Editing. It lost out to Titanic, which just about everything in the Academy Awards that year lost out to Titanic, except Best Actor somehow. Leo didn't get that one. Don't know how. 1997. I was in my first year in the Army, so I was in Korea. I was stationed in Korea that year as a fresh-faced 18-year-old kid who was looking to make his mark in the world and do great things. So I missed it as a theatrical release. But when it was later released on video cassette, I checked it out, and watching this last night, I forgot two things. Well, I forgot three things. One, I forgot how crazy Nicolas Cage can be in some of his movies. This is actually considered part of a trifecta of Nicolas Cage movies called, I'm going to quote this here. Where is it? There's three Nicolas Cage movies that all came out in the same 2-year period. It's labeled as part of the holy trinity of Nicolas Cage action films. This movie, along with Con Air that came out later in 1997, and The Rock that came out in 1996. Nicolas Cage loves this film, says that it's aged beautifully. I cannot disagree. Side note, he also started that year, the year this came out in 1997, receiving the Best Actor at the Academy Awards for Leaving Las Vegas. And then he became an action star, and this might be peak Nicolas Cage. I forgot how long this movie was. It's like 2 hours and 20 minutes. A little longer than I anticipated. I forgot how much I enjoyed this movie, man. I hadn't watched it in years. Like I might, I don't have cable or anything anymore, so I can't really just be flipping through the channels and catch a scene and be like, oh, finish watching the rest
Right.
of this. So that's kind of an issue. Not really an issue I have with streaming, but that's kind of something that's missed out nowadays. I think is if you get rid of
If you want
cable.
that feeling, Casey, download something like Pluto TV or Tubi, and they have like Pluto TV free. It's free, but they also have good on-demand content. But they also have those streaming channels, which will play movies like this, and you can just like be flipping through and be like, oh, like I like this movie, and you'll get that same feeling that you used to have for free.
I I have those. I have a Vizio TV, so I have Vizio. It comes with Vizio Watch Free. Tubi is already on there. What was the other one you said? Tubi.
Pluto's
Pluto's
better
on,
than Tubi in my
but
opinion, but
but
yeah.
both of those are on there. So you like I can always, if I at any point I want to, I can always just like pick up the remote and hit one of those and scroll through and kind of get that cable feeling. But I don't know. I think we've just become more of a deliberate society now with everything that's on and with the streaming world. Like, unless you're like unless you still have cable or in a hotel room or something, it's not like you're gonna be flipping through channels or like and all of a sudden see like an Office marathon, or like a Big Bang Theory, series or Modern Family or something, 5 or 6 episodes or something like that that's on, or The Simpsons or Family Guy. We'd just be like, oh, I remember this episode and leave it on there and kind of watch those. Now everything's just kind of more deliberate where you're putting, because it's so on demand, you're putting things on yourself, right? Um, like I said, directed by John Woo, written by Mike Werb and Michael Colleary, starring John Travolta, Nicolas Cage, Joan Allen, Gina Gershon, CCH Pounder. Basic plot summary is: to foil a terrorist plot, FBI agent Sean Archer, played by John Travolta, assumes the identity of criminal Castor Troy, played by John Travolta, who murdered his son through facial transplant surgery, but the crook wakes up prematurely and vows revenge. Um, so tell me, Jordan, what is your experience with John Woo movies, and what kept you from watching or seeing this?
Yeah, so I just went through his filmography. The only one I've seen uh, before this was Mission Impossible 2. So I had just started watching the Mission Impossible movies when the latest one came out. And I was like, oh, like I think I found a good deal on Voodoo or something of the full pack of Mission Impossible digital movies or something. And I was like, um, it was after I'd already gotten into Bond movies. So I was like, oh, this will probably be something up my alley if I liked the new Bond film. So I watched the Mission Impossible movies. And I enjoyed most of those movies. The one movie I did not enjoy the Mission Impossible ones was the one directed by John Woo, Mission Impossible 2.
I think that is the lowest rated Mission Impossible movie. That was a weird
It
time.
is.
The
Yeah, I think
first
so.
one was just in general like a straight
It was like the
standalone
TV
spy
show.
action movie. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, with part two, they really went in a different direction because like that's when they ended up getting like Limp Bizkit to kind of remix the theme song. So you had this new metal edge to it. Tom Cruise came out in the long hair. Like it was this whole weird time of like extreme things and yeah,
Yeah.
that's just a really weird movie. The rest of them, I think they kind of after that they went back to like let's just go kind of back to what Mission Impossible is and go from there.
Yeah, so I think that was last year was when I first watched those then. And um that's an early 2000 movie, literally the year 2000. So 3 years after this one, I think it was his next movie that I saw in the filmography. So that one was one that I did not enjoy as much. And yeah, so that's my impression of him. So I knew kind of going into this what his style was, because not to like sidetrack too much, you mentioned it, but all of those staples that are in this movie are in that Mission Impossible 2. The
Yeah,
slow mo, the seriously, like the scene in the church at the end here felt very similar to like the final showdown they have in Mission Impossible 2. So like it's the use of the music with the way that he's shooting the characters and so
Yeah,
it's all very the same in that regard.
like I said, he has a style. He has a panache. He has a style. Like if you're watching a John Woo movie, you're not like once you know who he is and what he's about, you're not going to be sitting there like, I wonder who made this movie. Like you know, you're watching John Woo. Like there's no ifs ands or buts about
Yeah, no, that's true. So I was 6 when this movie came out. It came out the day after my birthday, actually. So um,
it. Yeah, you're
I was
not
not
really
getting
gonna.
taken to.
This is not a
I've
6 year old
I've
a movie for a 6 year old.
I've heard about this movie. I knew the title. If people go back to that Grease episode we just talked about, when you were describing what movie, I guessed it was going to be Face Off because of I think the actors you were mentioning and kind of like the what you were saying. Like I knew stuff about it, but I didn't know every detail. You know, like I really didn't know who was the hero in the movie until you were discussing it, or when we were talking about that before I watched it. I just I knew the poster, Travolta, Cage, with the line in the middle of their faces. Like where they're both
It's a
on
cool
half of
poster.
their face. It is, yeah.
It is a cool poster. Like I gotta admit that. And there's a couple of scenes in the movie that are really cool. Like you said, the shootout scene or the church scene in the end, I think is really well done. Especially the part where they both end up on one side of a mirror. I think that scene was really
Yeah.
well written and done. Um, so okay, so like I said, it's 1997. Movie starts out. We get the starting of the movie isn't great. Well, okay, no. The start of the hold on, let me think back. I just watched this last night. Okay.
Same.
The initial start of the movie, Nicolas Cage and his pedophile mustache. It's a little weird, but hey, uh sure, why not? So we gotta think if this is taking place in real time at the time, that takes us back to like 1992. So we're in the early 90s. The pedophile mustache was a thing going, right? Okay. I only say that because yeah, he does kind of look like a weirdo with that mustache, but it fits the character, right? You get John Travolta with his son on a merry-go-round, and they're having fun. Nicolas Cage is drinking a soda while he's lining up a sniper shot. I'm not sure what the soda's all about. I don't know if that was a John Woo or Nicolas Cage added thing, but I think it definitely added something to the character of Castor Troy. I'm like, hey, I'm gonna drink this big gulp here while I'm lining up a sniper shot. Finally takes a shot at Archer and hits him, but the bullet goes through and kills his young son. And I think you see for a moment a twinge of regret on his face because it's one of those like, hey, this is personal. I'm a criminal. You're the guy trying to come after me. But sometimes there is like a code in there of like, hey, let's keep this between us a little bit, you know, and he kind of crossed the line, right? 5 years later, we see that Archer's kind of worked his way up the FBI. He's still chasing Castor Troy, which gotta admit, the name Castor Troy is pretty cool. Like that is a criminal mastermind name. Like I'll allow that one. There's really no other way to put it. John Travolta's an asshole in this, especially initially. Like what when
What makes you say that?
he's yelling at his the rest of his FBI agents there. What did you think of your first impressions of Archer after seeing his son get shot?
uh, I don't know, relatable. I guess I actually didn't think he was that much of an asshole. Like I feel like he could have been a lot worse after he's hunting this guy for 6 years after he had uh, lost his son. Tough opening to watch after becoming a dad to a son. By the way, that was.
I can imagine. Yeah, yeah. That I can
I was
imagine for
like,
you.
please
That
don't
probably.
kill this kid. um, but the I don't know. I felt like performance wise, actually, I thought one thing that was really good about the movie, I thought, were the performances of Archer in particular. When Travolta's Archer, and I think when Cage's Archer, they are like, it's really similar through line that I can see throughout the character in that regard. And I think their performances as the hero character for both actors was very strong, in my opinion.
So, on that note, have some notes about that. So, I had it here. Nicolas Cage and John Travolta spent 2 weeks together before filming to learn how to play each other. They decided on specific gestures and vocal cadences for each character that could be met. Right. So I think that's great right there. Like they didn't. So this is a great movie in the aspect of you get like a Freaky Friday. You get your what was the one with who's the teen with the abs there? He's not a teen anymore, but he was like a teen heartthrob. He was in the Disney Channel movies. Zac
Oh,
Efron.
the Zac
Zac
Efron
Efron.
with
Yeah, you
the
get this.
Seth Rogen or whatever.
And it,
Is
well, you
that
got
what it is?
Zac Efron,
17
where he played like his
again or whatever.
dad, and he switched. But you get all those body switching movies, right? Where
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
witchcraft or weird stuff happens, and they wake up in each other's bodies, and they realize being a teenager nowadays isn't easy, and oh man, being an adult is a lot harder than I thought. And then they switch back, and they have this mutual love and respect for each other. Right? Okay, this is a different spin on it because there's no magic involved. This is pure like science. So they do have to learn how to kind of like play each other. So on that, John Woo gets the it was originally set to be directed by Rob Cohen, right? He leaves the project. John Woo gets attached. So they went and looked at a couple of. He wanted a couple of different actor pairings. He looked at Sylvester Stallone and Arnold Schwarzenegger, Michael Douglas and Harrison Ford, Alec Baldwin and Bruce Willis. And at one point, Johnny Depp was being looked at, but he passed on it after he read the script. So I think all of those characters could have been good parents. I don't think we would have gotten near the movie we would have if any of those two pairings had been put together. But I like the idea of the pairings that they had thought of as far as like, okay, obviously Schwarzenegger and Stallone. I can't imagine the dialogue between
that
those two,
that seems like
right?
to be honest,
Well,
the plot of this feels like a Schwarzenegger Stallone movie. Like
it
I
could
could
have
see
been
them doing it. I could see them do
very
or
action
Bruce
heavy and
Willis. You
everything.
mentioned Bruce Willis. I could see Bruce Willis in a movie like this.
Yeah, but I like. Can you imagine a dialogue between Schwarzenegger and Stallone? You know, I don't know, just doesn't work. But
Yeah.
yeah, so you get this. You're an actor, you get this character, but then you have to play someone else playing this character, right? And like I said, this is like peak crazy Nicolas Cage, especially when you see him in the very beginning as he's setting the bomb up and he's playing this preacher at the LA Convention Center. He sets up this dirty bomb, right? And he's batshit crazy, right? He's twerking when this choir is playing. He's sexually assaulting this girl in the choir, right? He's giving this completely off the wall performance, like pure Nicolas Cage, right? And then he's got to calm down because now he's got to play this guy who's not really Nicolas Cage in Nicolas Cage's spot. But then John Travolta gets to play this off the wall version of John Travolta, who's this family man and who's been trying to capture this guy for years. And it's really interesting. So they get word Castor Troy has a brother, Pollux Troy, who paid for a private airplane in cash. And that's where Archer's like, he doesn't fly without his brother. So you kind of get the codependent relationship that he has on his brother. Um, his brother probably would have been diagnosed with either like ADHD and or being somewhere on the autism spectrum nowadays. Um, Maybe some other things. Um, he obviously, Pastor Troy, or Castor Troy rather, obviously cares about his brother and takes care. Quick side note, I was on BuzzFeed yesterday and I ran across an article of, and it was one of those things where, it asked the question, people fill in with their responses. And the question was people who have lower IQs, what is life like and how have you managed to live through it? And a lot of them were people who answered the question and, talked about how they have IQs in the 50s or 70s, 80s, which are on the lower end of the scale, right? And for them, everyday tasks are just extremely hard to do. The simple tasks that we take for granted are really complicated, and a lot of them struggle to hold jobs. But they try extremely hard, but it's difficult for them to do simple things. And they go through like these huge bouts of depression, and some of them are like, I'm really not good for anything. They have to end up living at home because they can't do it. They can't manage to hold jobs down very often, or all they can get is low paying jobs. But even the jobs that they have, like their coworkers kind of look at them with this disdain and this disgust because they make a lot of mistakes, or they have to be told things over and over again. They have to be trained on how to do things over and over again, and it makes it difficult to maintain these jobs. Or people, it makes them very difficult to maintain personal relationships with people because they're always looked at differently. And as I read through these, and it was a good read for me because I realized I was one of those people who kind of looked at some people in different ways and wouldn't hold my frustrations in. And I never thought to realize, like, hey, because one of them brought up like some people think you just are lazy or you don't try or you don't care. And he's like, people don't realize I'm giving my best, I'm trying hard, but for me, these things just, I can't do them. And I never really thought to take a step back and look at it that way of some people who have these difficulties and things. And then I read this yesterday morning and then I watched this last night, right? And I'm looking at Pollux and I'm imagining like, yeah, more than likely the only person he can really count on, or the only way he's able to really function, is probably because of his brother, right? Like his brother, still cares enough for him. He ties his shoe, you know, and his brother even tells him like, if you weren't my brother, I probably would have killed you by now. And I like the world just sometimes has weird ways of working at things. We talked about it last week with WandaVision, where I downloaded and listened to the Ballad of the Witch's Road right before the two finale episodes, and that song played such a big part in those episodes. So sometimes the world pushes some things in at you for reasons. So we get our first really big action sequence, right? We get they're on this private plane. Archer has an agent on the plane as his flight attendant, right? We see the style that Castor Troy has in this. He's finely dressed, and then he has this box that has like these custom made guns, this pack of gum, and these sunglasses, and all this other. He has this own panache of his. Once again, I wonder if that is partially from the people who wrote it, and or if Nicolas Cage added some stuff in there on his own of just wanting to go wild and crazy with this character. They catch up with the plane, and it's this massive amount of police cars, and there's a helicopter, and there's a Humvee, which is nowhere near as maneuverable as this scene makes it seem out to be. That thing probably would have flipped over and they would have died horrible deaths had they tried that turn in actual Humvee. But Hollywood magic, you gotta let it go. A lot of deaths in this movie. A lot of shit. A lot of people die in this movie too. I think I looked at the kill count. It's like
That they do.
68. It's like 68 or something. I was like, wow, there's a lot of people getting killed. Um, so what did you think of this first big chase and action sequence here, where with Pollux and Castor and Archer and his FBI agents and things?
Yeah, I was really wondering where this was going to go. Like, I knew the premise, right? So like,
How did
I
it get to that premise,
so
basically, right? Where he needs to
yeah,
get his
yeah,
face off.
is what I was thinking. And let me tell you, I cannot stand Castor Troy, and especially like this beginning when he's like in the church and just being like so over the top Nick Cage. I was like, okay,
Okay, is
what's
this like my
going on?
levels of Mateo hate, where it's just like you could respect
No, it's just
Nicolas Cage and the way he's playing it, but the
oh
character
yeah,
himself,
I
you're like,
love Nick. I love Nick Cage. I don't know if it's a Nick Cage issue or if it is a John Woo issue. So I talked about the performances of Cage and Travolta. I really like those performances when they are Archer. I'm not big on some of their portrayals as Castor. As okay, the clip I used for this that people just heard and people heard
yeah.
on the Grease episode, right? That
Ooh wee.
I just found that I just found that clip because I was like, all right, search face off clips. And I was like, before I watched the movie, and I'm like, just trying to pick one. And I saw that one and I was like, this seems like a reveal thing that people would realize. It's getting the point of the switch and all that kind of stuff. So I'll use this clip. And I knew when I played that clip, I was like, not digging how Travolta is portraying this right now. And it's the same way Cage portrays the character. So it is a through line. It
Yeah,
is Castor, but I'm just
both
not
of them
big
are
on
both of them are
over
extremely
the
over the
top.
top. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But so I was kind of like again, so I'm rooting for Archer like I'm supposed to be, right? During this part. So I did not see the agent on the plane coming. Um actually, so that was that worked on me. Also, I feel so sorry for Castor and Pollux because I'm like, what the hell were their parents drinking to give their names, give those children
okay.
those names?
So I'm glad you brought that up before you continue. Sorry to disturb you. So, uh, their names are actually from Greek history. It's a reference to Greek mythology. Castor and Pollux are twins transformed by the ancient Greek god Zeus into the constellation Gemini. To continue on with that, Castor and Pollux were Leda's twin sons by two different fathers. Castor was the son of Tiberius, king of Sparta. Pollux was the son of Zeus. Twin half brothers fought together in the Trojan War. Leda is also the mother of Helen of Troy. Pollux, as the son of Zeus, was immortal. Castor, as the son of a mortal man, was obviously mortal himself. They were allowed to spend alternating days together between the underworld and Olympus because Zeus took pity on the pair and gave Castor half of Pollux's immortality because they could not take the separation of death. So I don't know. I probably could have done a little more research on how Castor and Pollux, if there was a different dynamic between the two of them. But I like once I read it, I kind of like more of the names and how it goes back to Greek mythology, and that's where the names come from. Maybe their parents were Greek historians or something, and that's how they came up with the name. You're muted.
Sorry, I was gonna say I just felt sorry for them having those names. It's like sometimes I can understand if you're naming your kids after stuff. I've named my kid after a certain name that is named after somebody. But or influenced, I would say, by three different places. But anyway, some names can be left behind, I guess. If you're not like, I don't know, maybe they're Greek, right? Maybe they are Greek and they're having that name. But if they're just like big fans of it, I'm sure those kids were made fun of in school.
In grade school, yeah. Especially if this is
Yeah,
'97, they were kids in the '70s or '80s. Yeah, they were
right, right.
kids made fun of them.
So I wonder if this is actually part of a leftover script from what I was just reading that I didn't know, but I have the wiki open here, and it was mentioned on John Woo's page. I'm not sure if it's mentioned on this page. That it was originally going to be a futuristic setting.
Yeah,
But to get John Woo on, they retrofitted it into being a present day. So in that sense, like Castor and Pollux, like I feel like future movies do this a lot, where they'll take a name from like mythology
ancient
and try to,
history. Yeah.
or ancient history and throw it in there. So I wonder if that was like just part of that.
At one point, they wanted to set it all on the prison island as well, but
Oh
obviously,
yeah,
with many Hollywood scripts, it goes through different rewrites, and things get worked out. So,
that would have been interesting. Not sure how that would work, but
so we get you know the FBI agent on a plane gets shot, killed, and ran over by like an airplane. That's gotta suck, right? Um, uh, also, it fits with the John Travolta character in general of Sean Archer. None of them seem to really care about the people that are getting killed or shot in all the processes, whether it's Sean Archer himself or Castor Troy being Sean Archer. As people are just getting killed around him, he's just like, whatever, I got a dude to catch.
there were
I got things
there
going
was
on.
one there was one exception to that, I think, actually, Casey, which is when he is Castor and he is escaping the one building and the FBI is raiding it, and he takes off the guy's helmet and sees it's somebody he knows, and he like avoids trying to
Well,
kill
no,
him,
so
right?
okay,
Like that.
so there's
That's like
so
the only time.
well, no, okay, so if you look when just Sean Archer in the Sean Archer character, right, doesn't seem to have a lot of care of people getting killed or hurt, right, around because he's chasing Castor Troy. And then when Castor Troy is playing Sean Archer, he doesn't really care because it's all cops and he hates cops, right? When Castor is being played by Sean Archer, if you look, he very rarely actually shoots and kills anybody. He Most of the times he shoots somebody, he just injures them or wounds them because these are people he knows.
Right,
So
right.
he doesn't want to kill anybody. I wasn't sure if that was something you picked up on. It was something I definitely noticed again last night. Like he shoots guys in the leg, he shoots guys in the shoulder or whatever. Like you said, there
Right,
was a
right,
one
yeah.
guy he pulled the helmet off and knocked him out, and then shot next to him before the other guy pops in to make it
Shows up,
seem like
yeah.
he killed him, right? But he doesn't and tries not to kill anybody because these are people he knows and he's gonna have to hopefully go back to working with later. But Sean Archer, the Sean Archer physical body, regardless of who is occupying him, like people are dying around him, and he's just like, these things happen. Like, eh,
Yeah, he
you
doesn't care,
chose
yeah.
this life. People are gonna die. Um, they end up in a hangar. Uh, they end up in a hangar. Of course, inside a hangar on an airstrip with private jets, there just happens to be random turbine jet engines laying around that they're testing and working on. Right. So there's more shootouts, and next thing you know, Troy ends up behind a jet engine that goes, and he gets he gets shuttered back into this metal fencing. Did you think he was dead here?
Hmm. No, I guess because I was spoiled, right? So I was a little confused,
Okay.
right? Because I'm like, I know that they switch faces and that he
Yeah.
will be, but I'm like, they're saying he's dead. So I'm like a little confused. And then, they do that reveal later of like, we're keeping, as Travolta says, like, you're keeping him alive, and like they are, um, to be able to do the face switch and all that. But I was kind of confused. I was like, wait, they're saying he's dead, but I know that he's alive. And then
We
like
see him
even
later. Yeah.
Travolta thinks he's dead. Right. So I was really kind of confused. And then it's just, a revealed later.
So, yeah, we believe he's dead, right? Everybody's happy, right? So at some point he gets back to the office. I can't remember if this is before or after the night, like but at some point he gets back to the office. Um, Everybody in the FBI office is happy. I think, like they said, the CIA sent over a bottle of champagne. And this is where I say Sean Archer's an asshole because like he can't even acknowledge and accept that like this international terrorist. I can imagine he's probably on like a top 10 most wanted list all throughout the world, right? If he's this
Mm-hmm,
big
mm-hmm.
international, he killed your son, right? So he's number one in your heart for sure. He's probably number in the top 10 on the FBI list. If the CIA's sending over a bottle of wine or a bottle of champagne, right? I imagine the NSA is looking after him, Scotland Yard, Interpol, MI7, like all these agencies are probably like trying to get this guy. They all believe he's dead. So you can't even take a moment to like relax and celebrate. Um, you know, uh, so he gets home. We see obviously because the typical thing because he's been so much into his work the last 5 or 6 years, whatever it's been. He's been chasing after this guy. His home life is suffering. Him and his wife don't have a great marriage. His daughter's acting out. Um, you know, things just aren't good in the home life. But he lets his wife know it's over. Caught him. He's dead. Whatever, whatever. Um, so he's like, man, I'm gonna take a desk job. We're gonna go to counseling. We're gonna get this thing back on track. And happy moment there, right? So we go from there. Uh, next is where we find out. Yeah, uh, they're keeping him alive, right? I can kind of understand maybe why the government's keeping him alive if he wasn't totally dead. Because at some point there's probably more information you can get off this guy, right? Like there's also by the way, before he was put in this coma, he didn't let slip. He did tell him that there's a bomb that he placed somewhere in Los Angeles that's going to cause all kind of death and destruction. But because there's been this cat and mouse game going on for years between these two, Archer doesn't necessarily believe him, right? So, he doesn't know if he's being told this just because, he's trying to get his life spared because he's got a gun pulled on him at some point, or if he's being honest. If you're Sean Archer in that point, A, do you believe that maybe there's massive bomb in Los Angeles that he just placed? B, um, how are you feeling after all this?
It's a good question. I feel like I don't know because I feel like there's some key context we miss between their relationship. So, like, do we know how long he was hunting him before his son was killed?
It doesn't say, but I think at
Like, has this
that
guy been
point,
around for like a long time or something?
I would imagine if Troy is setting up a sniper shot to kill him, he's been on his tail for a little bit. Like he's been causing some issues for a decent amount of time for him Like I can't imagine he's just like, I'm going to take out this random FBI agent, right? There's got to be a reason. So I think there's a history there that goes back a year, couple years, something like that, right? Um,
Right.
that's what I
And
would
then we
imagine.
skip 6 years, and I don't really know, like, because I feel like me myself, I feel like I would have to act like any threat he said is valid, um, for just do it, like to do my job. Like I feel like I'd have to figure that out. Like, but again, I don't know if there's been times where he's like pulled these type of almost like Joker esque, right? Where it's like almost a Joker plan that then Batman has to figure out. Like, is he being serious this time, or is it one big joke to him? That's kind of what it felt like, and it's tough. Me, I feel like I would have to take it face value. But if he's done this kind of stuff before, I could see him being like, well, he's just trolling. He's just saying stuff.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if I can take this at face value.
So yeah, um, what I forgot to mention is in the hangar they actually captured his brother Pollux. So Pollux is in custody,
Mm-hmm.
right? Um, Castor is in a coma. When in Pollux's stuff is where they find this used to be a thing in the 90s. They were called zip drives. They were basically big, larger floppy disks, right? That held hundreds of times more data than a 3 megabyte floppy disk. And then eventually we got to like CDs, and then we got to like solid state drives and like USB drives where they're not necessary. But I in the late 90s I had a zip drive myself. Um, so on the zip drive is the diagram of this bomb that he has made and that is somewhere in Los Angeles, which is where they go back to Archer and let him know, like, hey, we found this, and they show it to him. So it shows him, like, hey, he wasn't lying. We don't know where this is. And based on the specifications in this, like, this is going to demolish and and put all kinds of horrible things in the entire Los Angeles metropolitan area. So, but it's like no one's gonna talk. So this is where we meet cast casters Troy on again, off again love interest played by Gina Gershon, and we get her brother played by Nick Cassavetes, I believe. Um, I forgot to get their names. Um, but we get those two who are brother and sister, right? Um, we see that Gina Gershon we find out Gina Gershon has a young son. More about that son later. Who, because she's been involved in like, a felon and everything else, Archer decides he will use the pressure point of, if you don't want to tell me anything, I'll make some call to Child Protective Services and I'll have your son taken away from what did you think of that?
Yeah, that was. This is a through line that they'll have right throughout it. Because, like you said, more on the son later, but also how Archer will kind of reverse course on this type of sentiment. But yeah, this is maybe the dickish move that he pulls in the opening 20 minutes.
Can you understand why he did it?
Yeah, I mean, like obviously she knows something, right? So he's trying to use whatever he can to get her to talk. While also this is after they first present the face thing, right? Or no?
Uh, yeah, they
Because I
take him
thought, yeah,
to
yeah.
Walsh
And
Industries
he's
or
like,
whatever. He
and he's
sees
like, I
his
don't want to do
buddy.
this. I'm gonna get them to talk.
Yeah, he sees his buddy there. One of his buddies lost his ear in the shootout on the airfield,
Yes.
and they're like 3D printing an ear that they're going to place on in the surgery. And they present this thing like, hey, what if you could walk in to prison as Castor Troy. And they kind of present him this whole thing of like, hey, it's this experimental surgery we have. We can literally take his face off and place it on your body. And I gotta admit, like, if I'm Sean Archer at this point, I'm like, there's no way I'm doing this. Like, you're out of your damn mind. Like, I'm not putting this dude's face on my body. Like, just no, just not happening. Right? Not gonna happen. But then when they get the date of the 18th, right? And the 18th is inching closer and closer. At the start of this movie, it's 11 days away. It's 264 hours. I looked it up. That's 11 days, right? As all this is going on, those 11 days are getting closer and closer. They're running out of time, and they know this bomb is real. Listen, they try with uh, these two, Gina Gershon and Nick Cassavetes there. They don't get anything. All they get is the 18th, and they don't get any other information, right? It's like, she kind of realizes, like, okay, we can't evacuate the entire Los Angeles metropolitan area, right? Can't go building to
Right.
building. We can't figure out, like, so our options are limited. He's like, yeah, this is something I have to do. His wife is not happy. Archer's wife's not happy because she thought he was done. He told her he was done, but part of this as well is that he can't really tell anybody what it is he's doing, right?
I didn't
One,
I didn't really understand this part either. So like after this one case that he finally solves of Castor Troy, did she think he's never going on any assignment again, or like
I
that's
think
what I was.
I think maybe depending how high up he moved, he could probably just move into like an administrative role, a teaching training role. No, he's not necessarily going to be a field agent where he's kind of like what cops were. Like some of them just work at the precinct or whatever, right? Where they're more administrative. Um, Not necessarily the best example, but how often you didn't see Captain Holt out there a lot, other than maybe like checking up on his people, right? In Brooklyn Nine-Nine, like Captain Holt isn't going out there like questioning bad guys that often. He's more of overseeing all these people, making sure that one, he's the captain, right? But he's doing other things to make sure stuff happens, right? So I think maybe that's kind of the thing of like he's fairly high up. He's like the assistant director of like the Los Angeles office. So I think I can imagine like he's probably not gonna just he wouldn't necessarily have to go out to be doing field stuff anymore. Also, maybe this is just me. Uh, are people just walking around the FBI office with guns all the time? Like, is there no arms room or like things
Right,
where
right,
they're
right.
like they're just walking around a random office, 9 to 5, like carrying holsters and guns and things? I don't know. Like, I would imagine that there might be like an arms room, and then you might have to go check your weapon out of the arms room. But I don't know. That's very possible. Maybe they're typing up TPS reports with a gun on their side because that's what they do. Like I said, wife's not happy, but he goes to do it. So he's got a 48-hour window, right? He's gonna go in, try and get the information, get pulled out. So he goes in, talks to the doctor, gives his wedding ring to one of his buddies. He's got a scar on his chest from where he was shot and where his son was killed that he wants the scar back when he's done. And they go over the separate things, right? Where he's like, okay, we can do this with the face. We can body hair. We can adjust. Obviously, hair on the head. We can do some cosmetic stuff there. They make a joke like, "Oh, we can get rid of the love handles." Because John Travolta's a little thicker than Nicolas Cage is, right? Um, we can get rid of the love handles. Uh, Talks about, like I said, the body hair, facial hair. Um, what was another thing that he talked about? So they said the height is negligible. Something they bring up that we don't need till later is blood types are different. Archer is an O negative, uh, universal donor type. I'm an O positive myself. Uh, Troy
I
is an
forget what I
AB.
am.
Troy's AB, which is AB is like the rarest blood type in the world. But he's like, hey, his brother won't know the blood. Like his brother won't know that. Like, that you
Right.
guys have a different blood type. But they give us that information because we're gonna need it later, right?
Yeah, and you know what? That actually, I think some movies do this really well, and some movies don't. I think this one did it well because I didn't think about it. You know what I'm saying? Like when they tell me the blood thing, I wasn't like, oh, that'll come up later.
Yeah,
Um, it's just something that when it does come up, you're like, all right, now I know why they had to set that up.
and it's quick
And
too. They don't
it
linger on
is,
it. It's
yeah,
just like quick and passing. Like he says it really
right.
quick, and he even says like, "Hey, Pollux
They
isn't
tell
gonna
you not
know.
even to worry about it,
Yeah,
so
don't
it
worry about
is,
it.
so you
Pollux won't
don't worry about
notice."
it. You're like, whatever,
You
yeah.
figure it's just something they threw in the script because they had to fluff, give him a couple seconds more dialogue, right? Okay,
Right, and like I said, some movies do this really well. I was telling my wife, we were going to see Back to Future Part Two in the theater, so we watched Part One again, and that's my favorite movie. So I always say that is like a perfect movie. And there's so many things in Back to the Future that they'll do that, like the clock tower, the lightning when it struck it, all that kind of stuff is thrown at you at the beginning, and you don't think it's going to really play a big role into it, and then it obviously is how he gets back home. So it's that kind of stuff that I can appreciate when I watch films.
they do the operation, right? Um, Gotta admit, it's a little freaky and weird to see like a face sitting in a ball of liquid or bowl of liquid there. That was just a little off-putting. Um, but it's a success. And Archer wakes up as Castor Troy, and he's freaked out by looking at himself and seeing a different face. Uh, yeah, how would you feel? Do you think you'd freak out like that as well?
I don't know. It was a little odd scene because like I felt like he knew this was happening, but maybe it is just the reality of seeing your worst enemy's face. It's not even like somebody else's face. It is the guy that killed your kid. It is like your worst enemy's face. Um, and you look in the mirror and see that, I could see that causing an issue.
Distress. Oh, another one of my
Yeah.
notes I forgot to bring up. Other pairs that they were looking at. Like I said, Michael Douglas, Harrison Ford, Bruce Willis, Alec Baldwin, Van Damme, and Steven Seagal, Denzel Washington and Wesley Snipes, and De Niro and Pacino. Um, this movie's not the same with any of those. Although I'd say Denzel and Wesley Snipes might. I can see Denzel and Wesley Snipes because I can see Wesley Snipes being cast of Troy. Like crazy Wesley Snipes from like Demolition Man, like in the same vein of Cast of Troy, and Denzel Washington playing like the Sean Archer character.
Right, right.
I could see those work. I could see that one maybe working pretty well. Maybe De Niro and Pacino because Pacino can kind of go on a crazy. He can give some oddball performances there too. But so yeah, he's freaked out. Then there's the voice. Like he realizes, like, oh, I still have my same voice. Like, how's this gonna work? But they put it. They explain they put a chip in there, right? And they can modulate it. They work it on. But he's like, hey, gotta be careful. Don't get hit in the throat. He's like, even a violent cough or sneeze can dislodge this thing, right? So okay,
That'd be my biggest worry then once they said that. Because I do sneeze pretty violently at times. I'm like maybe the technology's not there then. If it can get dislodged by a sneeze, maybe we have to wait a little bit
look, this is
before we
'90s
force
technology. This is '90s technology. It's not the best. I think now they could probably do it. In all fairness, I think at this point, they've already got the face on you. You're kind of locked in. Like
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
kind of stuck. Um, Worst case scenario, maybe they just mess up his voice totally and say, due to the accident, like his voice is horrible now, and it's not, you know. So the only people that know are the doctor, CCH Pounder's character, who works kind of like off some black book, off the record type stuff with like the FBI and CIA. I don't know if they mentioned what agency she works for. I can't remember, but you know, it's kind of, you know, maybe you can equate it to like Amanda Waller's character in the Suicide Squad movies, right? Where there's some shady things going on, but it's supposed to be for the greater good, and his buddy there, right? So, okay,
Well, you know what's funny is you say that, but she actually did play Amanda Waller in the Justice League cartoon.
really, I did not know that.
Yes.
I didn't even know Amanda Waller was in the Justice League cartoon. Um, I could see
Yeah.
that. That kind of fits. But yeah, okay, wow, look at that.
So it's funny
Um,
that you brought that up because that's what she is.
so all of a sudden, you know, Castor Troy's getting moved to this top secret prison, right? Um, a couple of Archer's agents are there to oversee the transfer. They don't know that this is Castor Troy, right? Or that this is actually Archer, right? So he gets to this prison. He gets a hood put over his face. Gets this prison, right? And this is a completely off the books prison. We find out it's like on an oil derrick and it's underground or something. Like there's no rules, there's no law here. Pretty much they can do whatever they want to these inmates. They have these boots that are magnetized, right, where they can stick to the floor. Um, those boots are the same boots that were used from the 1993 Super Mario Brothers movie. Um, the same boots worn by the Goombas in the Super Mario Brothers movie in 1993. The name of the floating prison, Erewhon, is an anagram of nowhere. It's also the name of a ridiculous uh, grocery store out here in the Los Angeles area where like bottles of water cost like $50 or something. It's only for like the rich and famous and crazy, crazy.
Jeez.
Yeah, it's outrageous. Like if you look it up and look at the price of this stuff, you're like, Jesus Christ, what the hell's going on with these people? So he gets there, right, and it's just out of control. Like like I said, the prison's magnetized, so these boots help them kind of keep the prison population under control. They get shock therapy all the time, right? They beat the hell out of these prisoners when they want and need to, right? If a fight breaks out, they kind of let the fight go until they're not entertained anymore, and then they decide to finally break up the fight. I'm sure the prison guards and everything are probably betting on these fights or trying to see if they can start things going on. But that's where he runs into Pollux, right? He's got to do some convincing to Pollux. At one point, he runs into some old people that he actually put in the prison, um, and
Yeah.
he has to catch himself that he where
Almost
he
slips up.
yeah. But even if he says that, like they're not really gonna believe him, right? Uh, so, but in order to really make people believe, because I think he can sense that Pollux isn't buying this, like Pollux is maybe sensing that something's wrong. He has to beat the hell out of one of these prisoners, and he has to go total Nicolas Cage over the top performance in this prison fight with beating up this prisoner. And he has to stop himself at the end from actually killing this prisoner because once again, it's Sean Archer in this body, and he doesn't want to kill anybody for no reason. But once again, we get another over the top Nicolas Cage performance. What did you think of Erewhon Prison in this whole aspect here?
Um, what the one guy from the Drew Carey show is in this. He's like the main guard that is like, I say when the fighting stops and all that kind of stuff. He was intro. What's his name? I have it. I thought I have it up here. His John Carroll Lynch. Yeah, he was in the Drew Carey Show. But yeah, we also get like Thomas Jane in the show. Like, man, there's some big people in this as background roles too. The prison itself was fine. I thought it again. This seems like another leftover from the futuristic setting, right? Like this.
Yeah,
Now that I know that the boots that are magnetically locked, and then the electrotherapy stuff like that. Yeah, I thought
yeah,
the
you can
prison
see
was all
where
right.
that you can see where that might have had like some sort of futuristic feel to it or whatever.
This is probably my like least favorite part of the movie is probably the prison stuff, and it's like the part that probably goes on just the a little too long in my estimation.
Uh, he finally convinces his brother that he's Castor. He gets the information he needs, right? Let's go back to the mainland. Right around the time he gets the information he needs, guess who wakes up from their coma from out of nowhere? Actual Castor Troy, right? Somehow he makes a phone call, gets his people over there. Um,
Yeah, nobody. There's no nurse. This is my biggest question. There's like no nurse who's on guard or like FBI agents on guard of
yeah,
this
that was my
criminal.
thought. There's no doctors and nurses on staff here. There's no guards because you have a terrorist, like the most wanted terrorist in
Yes.
the world at the time, that is in a coma right here. Yeah, you can't just allow him, but they did. Story purposes, Hollywood
Yeah.
magic. Uh, he makes a phone call, gets people over there. They manage to get a hold of the doctor. Somehow, once again, there's no passwords or encryption on these files, so he manages to watch this
Yeah.
whole video thing of what was happening, right? So he makes the doctor put Sean Archer's face on his body.
And kills them
So
all.
since they had to do some hair things, and maybe they could reverse some hair things and work with that because Travolta and Cage have different hairstyles and haircuts and things. I get that. But did they add love handles to Sean Archer?
Yeah, they kind of skip over all that part because I was wondering the same thing. Because like for Travolta's hair, like they had to cut it to match Cage's, so they had to
Yeah,
grow it to match Travolta.
yeah. Did they have to add some hair plugs in there to match? Not only that, but there's some other things I'm wondering. We'll talk about in a bit. I wonder. I'm sure there were some differences. I wonder if they what they did. We'll get to that in a few moments. Yeah. Then we find out he torched everybody and everything. They burned him alive. It's got to be a horrible way to go.
Yeah, so that was another thing. Like they set up the giving him the wedding ring,
Yeah,
so that way he would be able to get the ring. So that was another setup. I thought that was setting it up for something else to like maybe eventually prove that he is the one. Be like, hey, I gave you my wedding ring. Remember? Like, can you? But no,
yeah.
they kill him off like almost off screen.
We cut back to the island. Troy has a visitor. He thinks he's about to get out, right? And who walks in? But Sean Archer, Castor Troy in his body. This is the scene you played for the intro. This is the scene you
Mm-hmm.
played where John Travolta's giving a Nicolas Cage over the top performance. Basically explains to him that he's in his body now. Shows him the newspaper that this doctor has been killed in a horrible fire at his medical facility, right? So
Yeah.
all proof is gone. Anybody who knows anything is no longer there. So pretty much he's stuck there for life now. Like I can imagine, like Castor Troy, one would have had multiple life sentences, right? Like two, he's in a prison that's off the books. Like there's no sentencing for that. Like you're never getting
Right.
out. I think Nicolas Cage gives a great performance here. Like, oh shit, I'm screwed, right? Like, can you imagine you didn't want to do this in the first place? You go through it. You're in a body that's not even yours, which you hate looking at, and now this
Mm-hmm.
happens.
Yeah, and then you have to worry about how to get out,
Nobody's
right?
you know nobody's gonna believe you. Like it just sounds ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
Um, he shortly after that finds out that Pollux is being released because he turned state's evidence because FBI agent Sean Archer pulled some strings and was able to convince Pollux to turn state's evidence against his brother for a reduced sentences to get released to let him know about this
So this
bomb that's
was
out there.
this was something that I felt like uh if you are um Archer here, Sean Archer, you wonder if he's maybe starting to like I would feel pretty good about him getting out. I'd be honest because I feel like that the person posing as me would be kind of starting to show his hand some, and we kind of get that like when Pollux dies, like when we go forward and Pollux dies, and the
Yeah,
one guy's like, "What are you so upset about? It's just Pollux," and then he like shoots him, right? But like he was, there was a time where once he releases his brother, the agents are kind of like, we don't really agree with this. And he has to go in and like turn the mic off and be like, look, you're supposed to be
yeah, you're making me
turning
look bad.
over some evidence here.
So not only that, but like obviously this is a different person in Archer's body. Everything has changed once he gets back. His personality is different, right? Um,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Margaret Cho, the comedian Margaret Cho, plays one of his other agents there. Makes the joke about, "Hey, did you have a surgical procedure to get the stick removed from your ass?" Right? Because he's been
Yeah.
uptight for so many years, right? And he's kind of he tries to give the speech about things are going to change and things are different now, but like his boss comes in and he's like, I don't really agree with these methods, but he's kind of willing to give them a little bit of a rope because of what they have going on, and their options are kind of limited at this point, right? Um, Simple things like he doesn't even know where he lives. Remember, they boys and
Yeah.
girls,
He
this is
drives by.
1997. There's no GPS. So I imagine like he might have been able to like look up his address in his wallet or whatever, get some basic information about where he lives, but he doesn't like you're driving home, excuse me, you know where to go, right? You know exactly where to turn. For him, like, okay, he knows I live on like 123 Main Street. Okay. So driving down Main Street, he doesn't necessarily
Mm.
know where it is, but he's driving by and sees, which I'm kind of surprised how he's able to recognize his wife. Maybe he had a file on him. Maybe that's how he knew. But like, he has to like slam on his brakes because he's like, oh shit, I guess I live here. And even then, he's
Yeah.
like,
Oh, then he has to get out. Like the wife
yeah.
is like, what the hell?
But like every house looks the same, and he's like, I'm in hell. Like obviously, this is not
Mm-hmm.
his lifestyle, the suburban life with a wife and kids and things, right? Um, he just his personality with women is different, so he's a little more romantic and a little more flirty with his wife than she's used to or whatever, right?
Yeah.
We get to the day of the bomb, right? They find the bomb, but the bomb squad guys, the EOD explosive ordnance disposal techs, are like, look, man, we can't dispose of this thing. Like, there's too many safeguards in place, and he shoos everybody away, right? But he knows the code, so he types in the code to disarm it, and now he's a national hero, right? Nobody questions or asks how or why he's able to do that. Nobody cares. It's just this dirty bomb's disposed.
I actually really like this part because where I thought that the story was going was like it all culminating into stopping the bomb and like him having to get out of prison in time to stop the bomb. So the fact that it like got done uh earlier than that, what I thought was pretty interesting. I thought like that would be the climax, you know.
Them over the bomb, like pointing guns at each other over the bomb or something
Yeah,
as it
yeah,
ticks
yeah.
down. Um, yeah, so now he's literally a national hero. We find out later he's like on the cover of Time magazine. The president, so 97, this is Clinton, Bubba. President Clinton is calling his office, right? To congratulate him and tell him, he's an American hero and all this stuff, right? He goes home. Uh, he's more romantic with his wife. There's lobster. I don't know if lobster and spaghetti kind of fit together, but for the purposes of romanticism in this movie, sure, why not? Um, Candles and things. So let me ask you this. Do you believe his wife was sexually assaulted?
Uh, yes.
Like,
Yeah,
this
I
was something I
think
hadn't really thought of until I watched this again. Like, there was some false
that's what it.
pretenses here, and
It's tough. It's tough because like she did consent because she thought it was somebody else, but like that's the rub, right? Like she
but it
thought it was
wasn't.
somebody else.
Yeah, that's the weird thing, man. Like, I'm gonna be honest with you. So one, this is the actual Sean Archer's fault for this happening because he went into this procedure, right? And he even
Hmm.
says later like he can never make that up to his wife, right? I don't know if a marriage could survive this because it's one thing entirely if your face was swapped with somebody else, and that means somebody else made love to your wife, right? That's horrible enough as it is. Like, and then she finds out that's horrible enough as it is. Like, that's I don't know how much counseling you can have in therapy that's gonna work through that. It's a complete another thing when it's the dude who killed your son
Yeah.
who is inhabiting
Uh,
your body and now just made love to your wife. And
so
like,
this is my other question about it, Casey, before we go deeper into it. So they mentioned like having to do love handles and stuff or like removing them and stuff. Does she not look at his penis then? Because it would
okay,
be
that
different.
was that was what I said we were gonna get back to earlier. Like, did they do like
Okay.
penis grafts and penis transplants? Like, was there so like, look, everybody has different shapes and sizes of their genitalia, right? Like, no two are the same. Okay, so there should be a difference between Nicolas Cage's and John Travolta's, right? Like,
Yeah.
but like we said, they talked about they can adjust body hair on the two of them so that they'll match the hair on the head and their eyes, and they worked with that. They got rid of love handles on one. I imagine they had to add some love handles onto the other. Yeah, did they? They took care of a scar. One, did they add the scar onto the new Archer so that it would look it would still be there? Like, did she
I
not
would
notice that?
assume so, or else that would be
That's a
an
very
easy
distinct, like,
thing.
hey, where did your scar go? Two, yeah, dude, what's up with your junk, man? Like, how did that work?
Or like one of them circumcised and one's not or something.
That's a whole nother question. Yeah, like, I mean, I
Yeah,
don't want
yeah.
to know if John Travolta and or Nicolas Cage are circumcised. It's not my business. But that's a possibility that one of them could have been and one of them might not be. And if they had, like, there's so much to think about. But
Yeah.
also, like I said, that's enough for you as Sean Archer later in life to have to deal with. As his wife, could you come back and deal with that? I don't know, man. Like, that's that's heavy. It's heavy, man.
Yeah. Heavy stuff to deal with.
Archer, okay, so Troy decides he's got to escape, right? He makes amends with the dude he beat the hell out of earlier. As he's trying to escape, he manages because he finds out the only time they take the boots off is when they're giving you electroshock therapy, right? So he manages to get himself taken up there, causes a riot, turns everything off, overloads the system. He manages to escape, even though there's a helicopter chasing him, and he's on like an oil derrick in the middle of the ocean. The last scene we see of him in that race, he's jumping off the ocean, jumping off the oil derrick. We don't see him again until he's on dry land. Like,
Yeah. So did he swim the whole time?
how deep is that water? How good of a swimmer is he? Is he caught by some random fisherman? Like, what the hell's going on?
Because it seemed like far out,
It's in the
like
middle
a
of
far
nowhere.
out. Yeah,
And
that's
bare
tough.
minimum, I imagine if the United States government is going to have a prison like this, right? I'm not sure of the distance, but you often hear like international waters is like 15, 17 miles off the coast, right? Or whatever it is. Hypothetically, let's say it's like 17 miles from land. It's considered international waters. You always hear about stuff like that. There's laws are different and rules are different and all this other stuff, right? Piracy is allowed, you know. Even in Brooklyn Nine, like with the Pontiac Bandit, they had an episode where, you know, his jurisdiction didn't matter anymore because they were in international waters and they couldn't really do nothing with the Pontiac Bandit. Craig
Hmm.
Robinson, right? So I imagine bare minimum, it would have to be whatever that minimum amount of distance is offshore. So let's say it's like seven, you know, best case scenario, 13 miles. Did he swim 13 miles? Is he capable of doing that? Like, it's a lot. Is there no sharks or giant squid, colossal squid out there? Like, what's going on, man? No whales? There's a lot of
Yeah,
whales off the coast of California. Like,
that was probably the biggest stretch of the thing for me.
no,
Was
maybe the
this
penis. Maybe the penis was the biggest stretch. We don't
maybe the
know.
penis? Yeah, maybe.
Literally, it might have been a big stretch. We don't know these things.
Yeah.
He makes it back. He steals a car from steals a car from I can't think of the name of the people who park your car for it. Valet thing, right?
Valets. Yeah.
Um, word gets out that he, you know, escaped prison, right? He meets up with his buddy, Dietrich, who was what's her name's the sister of uh, the Dietrich's sister. Dietrich and his sister we met earlier. Meets
Hmm.
up with Dietrich, right? Explains to him what he wants to do. This is probably the first time Sean Archer has ever taken drugs in his life. I would imagine. Uh, I don't know if it's the. No, we won't go there. I don't know if it's the first time. That would have been either John Travolta or Nicolas Cage, but Sean Archer is
Probably not.
definitely
No, I don't think so.
definitely the first time. I imagine this would have been the first time Sean Archer himself would have taken drugs. And I love the line of "No more drugs for that man," because he goes completely off the rails. And this is where we got from our grief thing, where I did the whole "I want to take his face off," and everybody's just looking at him like, "Man, what the hell are you talking about?" But now things start unraveling, right? Um, on the way there, he calls. He tries to call the head of the FBI there, Los Angeles. But guess who picks up the phone? Sean Archer. Simple conversation. Well, if
Yeah.
you're Sean Archer, I must be Castor Troy.
Yeah. Why did he answer the phone? Did he like know it was going to be him or something? Or
Maybe, or maybe he just happened to be,
because at this
maybe,
point he knows that he escaped, and he's like,
yeah,
"Oh, that means he's going to be coming here." So he already knows that part
yeah.
of it.
Things are starting to unravel, right? Shenanigans are about to ensue. Okay, cool. Uh, we'll start to speed through this here. We find out that the boy that Archer had threatened to take away from Dietrich's sister is actually Castor Troy's son at some point. We find that out. And now he begins to feel bad because, he realizes this woman really does care about her son, because at some point when they meet up, you know, she the first thing she tells him is like, you got to go, you can't stay here, and he wants to stay or whatever, but she's like, no, like if you stay here and people find out, I'm gonna lose my son. Like that is her first concern and her first priority. He realizes like she may hang around with some shady people, she may be involved with the criminal activity, but she does love and care for this boy. She does love and care for her son. So maybe threatening to take her son away from her was probably a bad move on his part. And he's got sympathy. Um, we get Pollux sees this, lets his brother know. We get an FBI raid on the house, right? Um, Gunfire erupts. I like the idea of putting the headphones and some music on for the boy, so that he doesn't have to hear all the gunfire and horrible things that are going on, right? Once again, a lot of people are killed. Like I said, there's like 60 or 7. High death toll throughout all of this. Dietrich is killed. Uh, Pollux ends up chasing after Archer, and Pollux falls through the top of a window, through another window or a ceiling, and he ends up dying. This is where we
Mm-hmm.
get your quote from earlier of, what's the big deal? It's only Pollux Troy, and he gets shot in the head.
Yeah.
A lot of FBI agents killed, horrible things. Um, so we come to find out his boss is not happy with this raid and everything. So he's about to put a stop to it, but we start seeing that he's having some heart issues, right? And he causes him to have a heart attack, and then
Yeah.
um,
Well, when he's just doing the heart thing, is it because he has heart problems, or is he already having a heart attack at that point, and he just like escalates it more, or what?
I don't know if it's explained. It could be maybe his heart problems. I think maybe it was could have been the start with the stress of everything of the beginning stages of a heart
Yeah.
attack, and he escalated and allowed it to progress. Um, One thing we get at some point before this. Did you notice anybody else in the scene where Archer interrupts his daughter and her quote unquote date in the driveway?
Did I notice somebody else in the scene?
Yeah,
Like like a familiar face, or
yeah, yeah.
oh no, I don't think so. And I've been looking at the cast
A
list.
young Danny Masterson played the young
Oh,
man
I
who
I did see him
tried.
on the cast list. I didn't realize it was him.
A young Danny Masterson who played the young man who attempted to rape his daughter.
So
Man,
pretty in line with normal Danny Masterson.
man, this was in 1997. Now, I wonder if he got that role because of the Scientology connection between him and John Travolta. It's possible.
Oh, true.
Um, Two, wow, how pathetic that was. In case people don't know,
Yeah.
Danny Masterson is going to spend the rest of his life for many, many rapes that he was found guilty of out here in the state of California. Um, so yeah, we also get his daughter at various points is starting to sense maybe something is wrong, but maybe just thinks her dad is starting to get cool now. But
Creepy
after
scene,
this,
by the way, when he's like staring at her in the underwear and stuff.
100% creepy, but not. I don't, okay, don't
But it's not her
listen to
dad,
what I'm
right?
saying
Like
here.
I'm not. Yeah.
Not out of line for the character of Castor Troy, but unfortunately, it is completely out of line because in the body of her dad, of Sean Archer. Like, I don't want
Right,
people to
right.
hear this and be like, "That's not out of line." Like, no, 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 that's not what I'm saying. It's in line with the character of Castor Troy, right? He said definitely seems like I mentioned he had a pedophile mustache. Definitely seems like he would have
Yeah, yeah.
ended up having a conversation with Chris Hansen. He gives her a butterfly knife and tells her about sticking it into a guy's thigh. It's like, next time, let him take his pants off, stick it in his thigh, and twist. We'll get back to it. So after a shootout where Archer or Castor, Nicolas Cage's character, has actually been injured, he breaks into his own home and confronts his wife, and has to convince his wife that he is him. This is where we get the blood type that comes back into play.
Hmm.
I imagine very traumatic for her, but he gives her some information, things that only her husband would know, right? About like their first, I think it was like their first date. Or was that later? But like he gives her information that only her husband would know, to try and convince her that is really him. And I think she's starting to put together that maybe things were weird with her husband as it was. So she decides to play it off. She decides to, like, okay, let's see where this goes. She gets a sample of her husband's blood, sneaks off to her hospital because she's a doctor, and oh my gosh, it's correct. The blood type is AB. That's not my husband. Oh my God, I slept with someone that's not my husband. Oh my God, I slept with the person who killed my son. What is going on in life? And Nicolas Cage is there. I can't keep the name straight, so Cage is there, talks to her, right? And they come up with a plan of how they're going to finally resolve this issue. It's going to be the next day at his boss's funeral. Um, he wants to keep his daughter away. She knows she can help maybe explain this to other people, and she has like some medical proof, blah, blah, blah. Travolta wakes up, and his wife is gone, but he's suspicious because he did get a prick in his arm earlier in the evening, so he's suspicious. And later on in this scene, we get the great line of, "There's lying, deceit, and mistrust. This is starting to feel like a real marriage."
Yeah.
Um, he tries to catch her what's going on at the hospital, but because the nurses and the hospital staff are loud, and when they're talking, saying, "Hey, Mr. Archer, you can't go back there. Your wife's busy with somebody, blah, blah, blah." Cage is able to escape. But once again, he doesn't trust Nicolas Cage. So next day we get the funeral, right? We get uh this, I think this is probably the best scene in the movie, the whole church scene. The doves, dual wielding pistols and things, lots of shootouts. The wife gets involved. The daughter
Very
gets brought back.
long, very long climax, by the way, because you do the church and then it goes into the water, then it ends up on like the construction
Yeah.
site. Like it's pretty long climax.
It once again, this movie was longer than I thought. It's like runtime was like 2 hours and 18 minutes. I was like,
Yeah.
wow, this movie's longer than I thought. But also,
It's pretty
once the
normal
action
for
gets
nowadays
going,
though. But in the
but what
90s, that's a little long.
even going past 2 hours wasn't something that happened. 2 hours was usually a standard time. Between your hour and a half, 2 hours was pretty decent runtime. But it didn't seem, it wasn't one of those. We'll go back to the beginning. It wasn't Pulp Fiction where I was like, oh my God, this movie's to it. Like, still have more of this movie left. Like, it moved at a decent enough pace for me. Um, Seeing these two play off each other, they only had 4 scenes together in the movie,
Right,
right?
right.
They literally only had 4 scenes together.
Because they're constantly like
The
missing each other.
the initial one with the airplane and everything, right? There's the scene in the prison together. There's the scene of the shootout where they almost shoot each other. They end up behind, which I thought was a great scene, where they end up on both sides of mirrors, and they have their discussion, and Travolta says like, "Hey, why don't we just switch back?" He's like, "Nah, let's just kill each other." And they back up and they pull guns because they know each other's on the other side of the mirror, but they're looking back at themselves and they can't do it. Right? I thought that was a fantastic scene. And then this one in this whole climax scene, like, so they only spent time with each other in these four scenes. Something
I
that
like
came
the
from this,
standoff too. When everybody is pointing guns at each other.
yeah, and then like his buddy shows up, and then Gina Gershon's character shows up, and then another dude shows up with his daughter, and or another dude shows up, and there's people dual wielding guns and machine pistols at each other. Um, one thing I want to do though, I got from the scene. I want to drive a speedboat, man. Like the whole speedboat scenes. Like I want to get behind the wheel of a speedboat. I'd probably kill myself. One, because I can't swim, so I'd probably manage to take it way too fast and take a turn way too far. Then I'd end up in the water, and then I'd drown a horrible death. But I'd love to get behind the wheel of a speedboat.
It'll
Shootouts,
be fun.
people are dead. Daughter gets involved. She shoots what is actually her dad. But then Travolta ends up with her. Is really creepy because he licks his daughter and makes his line about peaches. But she takes the butterfly knife, twist and stick in his leg, right? Shootout, boat chase, shootouts on the boats and the Los Angeles Harbor Police. They end up on shore, right? And finally it ends where Travolta realizes like there's no way out of this, so he figures he'll just scar up the face before he dies. And he gets shot with a spear gun and he dies. Then are the FBI agents, the rest of his partners. Apparently, his wife explained this well enough to them, and they took her at her word for it. If you're one of these FBI agents, are you
They
believing this? There's no proof,
Yeah, I would
right?
have to. Though there is proof, the blood type. So what they can do here is they would be able to check the blood type, and
This was in like
you have the
30
word of the
minutes.
wife too.
This was in like 30 minutes. Like this whole, from the time like she called up one of the FBI agents to try and explain it to him until they get there. This is like a 30-minute period. Like, is she carrying
Yeah, but
around
I'm
blood
saying
test
like the
results in
proof
her
is
pocket? Like,
she could. She did the test at the hospital. She could print them. She
it is
can
possible.
whatever. But like I think
But
they are taking the wife's word on this, and because she would be able to describe like the fact that there is actual proof. They get there and Castor is dead. So really, at that point, they can take the guy. They can take Archer. They can run blood tests after that to confirm it and everything.
here's
Um,
the thing.
so yeah, I
This
think
is this is 1997. If she's explaining that her husband went on a secret, top secret mission that even you didn't know about to get Castor Troy's face taken off and put on his body so he could go into a prison to find out where this bomb is, and then Castor Troy woke up and put her husband's face on his body, and this is why Sean Archer's been acting weird. Like, how absurd does this sound to you?
it sounds absurd, but I mean, like, I don't know. I feel like once you have it's like why not listen to her? We can run the tests after
I don't
this.
listen because
Let's
this
approach
sounds
him.
absurd in 1997. Like, this is something you would
Let's
think of,
approach
like,
him. Let's approach him softly as Archer, so that way he doesn't start shooting at us. And we will run the test after that. And they're obviously able to get the face back on him after that. So that would be like somebody else knows about this technology, and they're able to do the tech. So somebody's able to still figure it out from there. I was thinking he would have Cage's face stuck the whole time because they killed the other guy.
Yeah. Uh, okay. Here's another thing I have. I have big issues with the end of this movie for two reasons. One, she knows her husband is going in for surgery to get his face put back on. Right? She is a doctor. I understand she's a doctor. She's busy, but they get time off and things. Don't you think she should have been there to be there when her
Yeah,
husband wakes up?
I thought it was really odd that she is just sitting in the kitchen, writing a
Working
letter or
on,
whatever she's doing.
yeah, we're working on whatever. Like, two, who picked them up from the hospital? Because, like, even for basic procedures, you have to leave in a wheelchair and you can't leave on your own. Like,
So here's how I rationalized it. I rationalized it that this is one, it's not actually like they didn't check him into a hospital, right? So this is like a facility, so they probably don't have as much out. She probably couldn't be there because of the top secret, uh, I
she
don't know,
already
whatever.
knows
But
though. It's not like she doesn't know what's going on.
right. But what else? She doesn't have clearance to get into the building. I don't know. But the way I rationalized it is she was there for it, and then he was recovering there for a bit, enough that he was able to drive home, and he picked up the kid on the way. That's the
Okay,
only thing I can think of.
one, I think I just, yeah, your wife sitting. You get out of surgery, your wife just sitting at a kitchen table welcomes you home. Horrible, horrible. Now, granted, their marriage isn't in the best of conditions, so maybe he kind of deserves that. Can't really put that past him. Like, he's gonna be trying to dig his way out the doghouse for quite a while. Number two, this child. Not saying this child does not deserve a loving, nourishing home. Okay, he's a child who was a foster child and went through the adoption process and went through the foster child system themselves and knows how bad it can be at times. Okay, I 100% understand. However, the process of adopting a child for anybody is a long, arduous process. It is not easy, takes much money, and it takes years. That time can be cut down only if you have much more money, where you can kind of buy your way to the top to get what you want.
Well, so I didn't take it as him adopting him right yet. I have it as them being like fostering him, and they got clearance because he was the government. Like it's a government thing. Like That's the only thing. And then that they'll see if he's actually a fit and adopt him and go through the
Dude, this
legal
this isn't a
work
this
after
isn't a
that.
puppy or a kitten where you can just like take it home and try it out for a week and see how well it gets along with your other cats and if it'll adjust. This
I
is a
didn't mean it like
child.
that. I mean, like, look,
Like,
this is also the guy that got his who killed his dad too. So I mean, there's some stuff with that. But
two, don't you think you need to ask permission of your wife, especially of the wife who not only lost her son, but who has slept with the person who killed their son because of you? Don't you think that permission, like, that should be a conversation that's had ahead of time?
well, yeah, no, I do think you have to have this conversation. This is just the setup for the end of the movie. This is what they wanted. They wanted that
Happy
soft
ending, I
lighting.
get it.
Soft lighting. He walks onto the porch, and I got a present for you. It's a replacement kid. Like that's what it kind of felt like.
It's a new
Which
model. It's a '97 model.
yeah, and you know what? He answers to the name Mike already, so this is great. I called him that the other day, and he was fine. Um, it's that's my biggest problem with this happy ending is it does feel like after he says I don't need the scar anymore, I got a new son. I don't need a like, it seems like he's replacing him. I know that's not what they were intending, but it comes across that way.
Okay, so before we get to some reviews and things, we'll get quick couple of quick notes. I talked about Johnny Depp. Holy Trinity. Okay. Paramount Pictures announced in September 2019 plans to remake Face Off with either a new cast or the possibility of the returning cast. So we may be seeing more Face Off in the future. Could be a sequel, could be a reboot. Who knows what's going to happen? Co-screenwriter Mike Werb got the idea for the surgery from a friend who had a hang gliding accident. Had to remove most of the skin from his face, reconstruct the bone matter, and then put his face back on.
Yikes.
John Travolta asked the writers at one point if they were making fun of him with the line of this ridiculous chin. They had to explain to him that Castor Troy was such a narcissist that he would hate having anyone else's face. They didn't use a lot of digital effects for the stunts. A lot of this was very practical and used stunt. Also, maybe it's just because it's 2024. There were definitely a few times I could tell it was stuntmen, and it wasn't Nicolas Cage and John Travolta, but I also wouldn't expect Nicolas Cage and John Travolta to do some of those stunts. The studio wanted John Woo to take the slash out of the title. He kept it in because he didn't want people to think it was a hockey movie. According to the blood test results, Castor Troy, his A1C is higher than 6.5, which means he is diabetic. 6.5 A1C is usually the cutoff for diabetes. I know that personally because I'm now pre-diabetic. My numbers have gone down, but at one point I was in like the 15 point something range. But so Gina Gershon and Nick Cassavetes came up with the weird brother and sister kiss. Gina Gershon said, "There's something so warped about them anyway. I think they just really love each other." Yeah, that was definitely
maybe they should have kept that. Maybe they should have kept that in the back pocket.
The movie inspired the TV show The Clone Wars episode of Deception in 2012, which had a similar plot. In the episode, Obi-Wan Kenobi undergoes a face transformation procedure in which he assumes the identity of bounty hunter Rako Harding, goes undercover in a Republic jail so he can foil Marlo Eval's plot to kidnap Chancellor Palpatine.
And they do something similar with the voice thing, but they stick a spider droid type thing into the mouth, and it is a voice-changing box.
John Woo is a Hong Kong filmmaker known for his distinctive action style, which includes stylized violence, slow motion sequences, and the use of dual weapons. He also uses doves as a symbolic device in his films to represent the purity of a character's soul and their connection to God. Doves are often featured in slow motion, which is another deliberate choice by John. Okay, so let's look at some reviews. On IMDb, let me see. Hold on. Let's go with Rotten Tomatoes first, since that's the only one that really wants to work on my computer right now. 93% certified fresh from 97 reviews. 82% popcorn meter from People reviews. Metacritic, 82. Certified must-see based on 26 critic reviews. 7.6 user score. And it's also rated fairly high on IMDb. IMDb is acting up right now and is not giving me the information I need, but that is okay.
7.3.
So for me, like I said, I hadn't seen this movie in a while simply because I don't have cable anymore, so like I can't just be flipping around. I forgot how much I enjoyed this movie. Bringing me back to a better time, just a much better time in 1997, which I really wish we could go back to. I give this a 4, maybe 4.5 at the most. It's not perfect. Definitely some questions I have. Not a fan of all of John Woo's films, but this is a good one. And with Nicolas Cage and John Travolta, I think they played those parts very well. They both received acclaim for having to play those parts, and I think they did a good job. What do you say, Jordan?
So, as I mentioned before, not big on Mission Impossible 2. A lot of the issues I have with that are present in this. I have this as 3 out of 5 stars. Now, the saving grace of it, I think, are the performances and the story itself. I think the story is a very good story.
The story's really
The
original
things
and
that
fantastic.
Yeah, the things that really drag it down for me are like I think the prison part goes on a little too long, and I think just the direction. I'm not big on his style, and I was trying to describe it to my wife because she asked like, "How was the movie?" I said, like, "It was fine, like a 3 out of 5." Right? I said it's very similar to another movie he's done and that I wasn't a fan of, and I was trying to describe it to her, and I tried to describe the scene again where he visits um, Archer in prison. And I said, now imagine it shows him looking at the door, and then the door starts opening in slow mo, and then it cuts to Travolta on the other side of the door reading the paper, and then it cuts back to Cage looking at the door in slow motion, while then we cut back to the door as
There
it's
was a
opening
lot
in
of
slow
slow
motion. Now
motion in this one.
his face is almost revealed, but then we cut to Travolta and he's looking down at the paper. Then we cut back to Cage as he's staring at the door, and then we cut to the door. It's now fully open, and we cut to Travolta. I'm like, it was a little too much in that regard, and it happens throughout the movie where they show like the same like anytime it's like big
A
action stuff, like when
lot
she
of cuts.
whips out the pocket knife thing, it's like you see her face and then they cut to her hand opening up the blade, and then we cut back up to her as she's swinging her hand. It's I don't know, like that stuff kills me. But like when we get to like the boat chase, that was doing it in normal speed and it was like fun, right? And like the church scene was mostly fun. But it's those other moments where I'm like, it's a little over the top at times. The cuts, the slow mo, stuff like that. So I had to dock it points for that.
He does have a very distinct style. Like I said, when you're watching a John Woo movie, you know it's a John Woo movie. You'll see dubs. You're gonna see a lot of slow motion. You're gonna see a lot of quick cuts with a lot of that slow motion. But I will give him credit in the aspect of I don't think he could do like a Marvel movie where it's kind of like, and not to say that the Marvel movies are generic in a way, but you know what I'm saying. He can't do something like that where they have like this just basic thing. Like he has his own unique style. He's only gonna make the movies he wants to make and movies that fit his style. So he can't take something. You can't just give him any movie and be like, turn this into a John movie. This is gonna be a completely different movie.
Yeah, I wouldn't be able to watch a Marvel movie by John Woo, I don't think. Okay, we also have the
Endgame.
question of if we would be able to, like what's the most we would buy it on sale? It'd probably be like a $5 movie for me
I
if
think
I
I
was going to
paid.
buy it.
I think I just paid for the upgraded HD Blu-ray version. Um, that just came out not too long ago.
Um, yeah, I think the Blu-ray just came out. 4K came out like last year. It says.
Yeah.
Um, okay. Do we have any other questions about this,
No, no. Unless there's
or is it
anything
my
else you want to
turn?
add, or if not, what are we viewing next?
So before I reveal that, I wanted to share something I've been working on. Here is stats, films for the very first time stats.
Hmm.
So I'm going to be doing this here as we go throughout. I'm going to be adding this stuff. If I'm correct, top directors. We've had one director that's done 3 movies. That's of course Peter Jackson with the trilogy. We have 2 James Cameron movies. And then I have top actors. And the reason why I started thinking about this is because we've seen Travolta a few times. We've seen Sean Astin a few times. We've seen Arnold Schwarzenegger a few times. We've seen a lot of these people a few times. So I wanted to ask you, who is the person that we've watched the most? And then I'll tell you what we're watching next as well.
Okay, so I don't know, but I would say the possibility that the three Lord of the Rings movies might skew it because so like that kind of skews the director thing a little bit because
It
you could kind
does,
of
yeah.
put that as one. I get there's three separate movies. Um, I might say Aston. I think Aston might be the one with the most.
He is Goonies and the three Lord of the Rings films. But we will have a person tie him because right now we have two people. We have a few people with three films, of course, right? Like Viggo
Schwarzenegger.
Mortensen, Elijah Wood, all them, right? Like
Yeah,
Schwarzenegger, yeah, of course. All the ones that have been parts of trilogies. We've done that. Travolta is actually the only one that we've seen three times in three different type of movies: Pulp Fiction, Grease, and Face
and
Off.
this yeah
So
number
he's
four.
up there.
Number three.
This is number three. Yep. But what we're going to be adding a fourth film to Arnold Schwarzenegger's list here. So he will tie Sean Astin
Okay.
because we are going to be watching a beloved holiday film for me. This episode will be releasing in December, and it'll be our Christmas episode for the year. We're going to be watching the classic. I think this is 1997 as well. It might be 96. It's 96, I believe. Jingle All the Way. 1996. Starring Arnold Schwarzenegger, Sinbad, Phil Hartman, Rena Wilson, Jim Belushi, and it was a Christmas movie that came out in 1996. So we will be watching that next week. Where you can find it. This is actually one of the times that this is on three different services right now. This has got to be like the
Wow. Okay.
most I've ever seen when I searched for something.
Yeah.
It's
Usually it's
on
only like one.
Yeah, it's on Disney Plus. It's also on Hulu. Not because so sometimes Disney Plus stuff is on Disney because if you have the bundle, you have access to Hulu, but this is strictly on Disney Plus as well as strictly on Hulu
Okay.
as well as Prime Video. So it is on three options for people to watch it on: Disney Plus, Hulu, or Prime Video. I guess because it's getting close to Christmas, it's on. I was worried it wasn't going to be on any service. Actually, I was kind of like, "Oh crap, are we doing it too early?" Because we're recording this early November here. But yeah, we'll be getting into the holiday spirit with Jingle All the Way,
All right. Looking forward to that.
and we'll be adding stats onto the episodes from here out. Like I'll just kind of try to keep that Google Doc I have uploaded. Like we've seen two Nicolas Cage movies, Into the Spider-Verse and Face Off. Um, so it's fun seeing some of these people who have been in two movies, and some of them are like so totally different. Like James Earl Jones, who unfortunately passed away this year, was in Star Wars Rogue One when we watched that, and Field of Dreams. You know, like seeing stuff like that instead of just the franchises is pretty cool going through
I
this.
know.
So
Yeah,
I'll try to
we
keep
lost a
tabs
lot of
on that.
people. We just
Yeah, we
lost
have
Tony Todd
Tony
yesterday.
Todd. Yeah.
Candyman. Man, that one hurt. That one really hurt.
Yeah, he's been in a lot of superhero stuff as well. Tony Todd. He voiced Venom in the Spider-Man 2 game. He um,
Final
voiced
Destination, Candyman.
yeah, he was a big horror guy, and he also was in a lot of like DC and Marvel stuff. So
That
unfortunately,
that
he's
voice was
passed away.
powerful too. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I know. I was so shocked by that. 69 years old.
It came from out of nowhere because he was fairly
It
active
did.
on Twitter. Like he was on Twitter a lot, and I would always enjoy seeing his stuff on Twitter because it was him interacting with fans or like meet
Mm.
and greets he would do with fans, pictures fans took of him, artwork that they would send in or whatever. Like he really enjoyed the art that he made and how much joy it brought other people.
Yeah, it's a real bummer. But yeah, so we will be talking Jingle All the Way next, not next week, 2 weeks from now, next episode on the podcast. I hope everyone has a great Thanksgiving if you are stateside here with us. because there will be no episode next week for the Thanksgiving holiday. And we'll be back with kicking off the Christmas holiday and festivities here on Films for the very first time.